Welcome back to the Golden State with Mates post-game live after the Warriors get a much-needed win at Target Center against the Minnesota Timberwolves on Saturday. 113-103 is their third victory in the last 12 games. Welcome to those of you in the stream. Let me know your thoughts and comments from the game. A 10-point victory for the Warriors in what was a weird one, it must be said. Like, you started out with the whole net debacle before the game even started, and the fact that it delayed tip off by about half an hour. It's just sitting there waiting for the game to start like everyone else. A little bit frustrating. Sounded like it was Jonathan Kuminga's fault more than anyone else, with holding onto the rim a little bit before the game. But once we got underway, quite a strange game, I would say, where the Warriors obviously coming off Thursday's complete and utter disaster, 51-point loss to the Grizzlies. The Timberwolves coming off their own blowout defeat to the New York Knicks. And I think both teams kind of played like two teams that aren't in great form at the moment. I don't think either team played overly well, but the Warriors played well enough. And they also have a guy called Steph Curry who was able to deliver them home down the stretch. I sat here after Thursday's game against the Grizzlies, where Steph obviously went for 2 points, the first game of his career where he failed to score a field goal when he's played over 12 minutes of action. And I sat here and said that, hey, I'm not going to be going early on a Steph Curry decline. I'm not going to be that person that ushers in this idea that Steph Curry is no longer what he was, and the idea that the Warriors actually need a lead guy, not just a second option to support Steph. I'm not going to be that person. I'm going to hold faith in Steph that he is still capable of producing at an all-worldly level. We saw that during the Paris Olympics in the semi-final and final, where he was the best player on the court in both games and delivered a gold medal for Team USA there, and that's, less than 6 months ago. So I'm not going to go early on that, and this was a performance from Steph that certainly silenced the doubters, certainly silenced anyone who wants to proclaim that Steph Curry is in decline, which, to be fair, the last 10, 12 games would suggest that. Even the scoring across the season, where he's averaged before this game just 22 points on the season, that would suggest somewhat that Steph Curry's in decline. But I think he's still more than capable of pulling out excellent performances like he did in this one, where the Warriors are up just 2 with just under 4 minutes left. And then in 4 straight possessions, Steph goes 3 ball, 2 free throws, 3-pointer, 3-pointer, 11 points in the space of less than it was basically 90 seconds, 11 points in 90 seconds in the final 4 minutes there, to go from a game where the Warriors are up 2 to all of a sudden they're up 11 with a couple of minutes left, and they've kind of shut the Timberwolves out. So a massive performance from Steph, but certainly not the only positive for the Warriors as they try and stay afloat here and climb back up the Western Conference standings after falling to 10th before this game. A few comments from you guys. GSW, Pods and Trace had a great game. Warriors only 10 turnovers. So for me, those two guys, and particularly Trace, were the biggest storylines from this game outside of Steph. So for those unaware, Draymond was out in this game, which only makes the Warrior win all the more impressive. He was dealing with an ankle issue that apparently he tweaked earlier in the day. So he was out. Steve Kerr went to a kind of a bizarre starting lineup with Steph, Schroeder, Wiggins, obviously, but then Kyle Anderson and Trace at the 5. And Trace was huge, and particularly early. He made his impact and presence felt straight away. Had 6 points, 6 rebounds, and a block, I think, in his first 5 or 6 minutes. Ends up with 15 points, which is an equal season high. 9 rebounds, couple of block shots, was a +7, 7 of 8 from the floor as well. Clearly, I think the best performance from him for the season. And he played with an aggressiveness and an intensity that has just been lacking from him too much in his sophomore season so far. And it's weird because this is a game going against Rudy Gobert, who's one of the best defensive-minded guys in the league, obviously one of the best defenders in the league, 3 or 4-time defensive player of the year, whatever he is. We can argue whether he should have won that many times, but whatever. He is one of the best rim protectors in the league. And Trace played at a level that I think signified, I'm going at this guy. I'm not going to be scared. And too many times, Trace has just lost all confidence and he's finishing around the rim. And this game was vastly different, where he was just like, no, I'm going up strong. Couple of nice layups over Gobert where he pump faked on him a couple of times where he just went up strong and slammed it down. And you look at a game like this, and I just watched Steve's press conference, and someone asked him, like, how can you get performances like this from Trace and Pods more consistently moving forward? And that's the thing. Like, you look at a game like this and you wonder, why can't Trace Jackson Davis play like this more often? Because if he's going to be a scoring threat, someone mentioned it the other day, like the Warriors were actually kind of good at the start of the season with Draymond and TJD as the 4-5. And if TJD is going to play like that, where he is actually finishing around the rim well, where he actually is powerfully going up, where he's becoming a threat in pick and roll and on lobs and stuff like that, then you might be able to get away with a Draymond TJD 4-5. It might be the Warriors' best solution. Now, I don't think it's the perfect answer necessarily. I still think the Warriors might need to make a trade there. But if Trace can perform like that more consistently and with the intensity and the aggression that he did, then that brings a new element to the Warriors that they just haven't had. And they don't really have with Looney, because he's like a stand on the floor guy. Like, he's not getting up and being able to finish like TJD. So huge performance from him. I think a season best performance. And Pods, as GSW mentioned there, he had 5 of 9 shooting off the bench, 2 of 3. The shooting's starting to come around. And I did say it, like when he was shooting 20% from 3 for the season, I did say, like, the shooting, he's not a 20% 3-point shooter. Like, the shooting, there will be an uptick here. And there has been over the last 6 or 7 games. I think Fitz was, rambling on about it quite a bit in the broadcast, that, his efficiency shooting the ball is starting to come around. He obviously had that big 3 at the end of the first half, 2 of 3 from beyond the arc, 12.7 rebounds, an assist, couple of steals, plus 11. Still had that play in transition where he tried to make a layup that he just absolutely just should have given up to Kuminga, and he smoked that. But I think a couple of better performances here from Brandon Bajemski. I don't think his performance in the fourth quarter against Memphis, yes, the Warriors were down by 50, but that wasn't nothing. Like, if you're a young player and you see the ball go through the net a few times like he did, he had 21, 23 points, whatever it was on Thursday, that means something, particularly when you've been struggling as much as he has. And so I think I took something out of that. I had to take something out of it because everything else was just so negative that you had to take a positive out of it. And again, a better performance from him. I think he looks much more comfortable when he's not the primary point guard out there, where he can just try and do a little bit of everything, where he can focus more on his catch and shoot stuff and his scoring, his efficiency in general. So, good performance from Brandon Bajemski. And the turnovers, very important. Just 10 turnovers. Minnesota had 15. Again, we talk about, the Warriors, when they do turn the ball over, then that really limits their ability defensively, rather than obviously trying to get set up and force the opposing offense into half-court situations where the Warriors can be much more effective. GSW also says, looks like Kerr wants Kuminga as a 6-man, refusing to start him with Dre out. I don't know. That might have been the final straw to me. Like, I know JK ended up playing 23 and a half minutes. Kyle Anderson played less than 17. It felt as if I don't think Steve's got an answer. I don't think Steve's got an answer for that 4-5 position. And almost felt to me like, all right, we need some kind of lift here. So let's start Kyle Anderson against his former team and just see if we can get something from that. Slow-mo wasn't overly effective. 3 points, 2 rebounds, 2 assists. Look, he was okay without doing a whole lot, obviously. Why don't you start Kuminga in that game? I actually don't. I actually think he just doesn't want to start Kuminga and Trace together. 2 young guys. I don't think he wants to start them at the 4-5, which is exactly why Draymond out, that Kuminga, also didn't start, and Kyle Anderson, came in. And I'd imagine when Draymond returns, he'll probably go back to the Draymond Trace scenario at the 4-5, which again, I'm not sure that's the solution, but it worked a bit at the start of the season. And if Trace is going to play like he did, then it's clearly going to be more viable than what it potentially could be if he doesn't play with that intensity and aggressiveness. GSW, GP2 airballing wide open 3 in the second quarter. Been seeing that a couple of times now. At least Steve had him out. Like, GP2, I've been clamoring for him to be out of the rotation altogether. Plays nearly 21 minutes in this game. 7 points, 5 rebounds, 4 assists. I thought he was better, and part of that was the fact that he was actually out there guarding Ant at times. Like, I was it was one of the most bizarre situations on Thursday where GP2 played 4.5 minutes in the first half, and they were basically I think all of the seconds he was on the floor were without Ja Morant. Just made no sense whatsoever. And at least Steve in this game, when he went to him, he played him against Ant, and he was able to have some defensive impact. Ant had what did he finish up with? I know he was 6 of 20 shooting from the floor, had 19 points on 20 shots. So the Warriors did an excellent job defending Anthony Edwards. Dan Decker says, our defense in the first half was incredible. Trace had like 7 rebounds in the first quarter. Buddy shot some clutch points. It's good when he's playing well. Rest were giving the Wolves unnecessary free throws. Yeah, Minnesota, let's talk about the defense. So the Warriors really won this game, you would say, in the first half, where they kept Minnesota 37 points, had a 13-point lead. They should have been up by more. The fact that it was disappointing they had to win the game again. The Minnesota climbed back from a 21-point deficit, took the lead, and the Warriors needed Steph to go on that Curry flurry in the final 3 or 4 minutes there. So, yes, good to get the win, but that was going to be a tough loss. If the Warriors weren't able to close that out and they allowed Minnesota to come back and win that game, I think we all would have been looking at the first half and pointing at that and saying the Warriors, as good as they were up 13, they should have been up 20, 25. It was almost very similar to, like, the Minnesota offense in that first half was eerily similar to the Warrior offense against Memphis in the first half on Thursday. In fact, you could argue the Timberwolves offense was worse. They had 15 points in the first 18 minutes of the game or whatever it was. They had 15 in the first quarter, and then they went the first 6 and a bit minutes of the second quarter without a point. They had a nearly 8-minute stretch without a point. And the Warriors slowly built a 21-point lead. Like, the Warriors weren't really firing themselves offensively. And that 21-point lead, when it was 36-15 halfway through the second, that should have been a 30-plus point lead. If the Warriors were competent offensively, that should have been much more. So, yes, it was impressive. The defense was good. There's also and I think this is where things balance out. I think over the last 2 games where the Warriors had given up a total of 287 points to the Mavericks and the Grizzlies, I think part of that is obviously poor Warrior defense, but part of it was just those 2 teams just hitting every shot, and sometimes you can't do anything about that. This game in the first half, it felt like, part of it was the Warrior defense, but another part of it was Minnesota just missing wide open shots that they should make. Like, some threes, obviously. Then there was, Edwards missed a dunk. Edwards missed a layup, 2 shots in the second quarter there where he would just make 99.9% of the time. Minnesota there was something going on. Obviously, there was an issue with the net and the rim before the game, and maybe there was something going on there because there was a lid on the basket. There was a lid on the basket there for 7 or 8 minutes for the Timberwolves in the first half, and they could not get anything going, even with really good looks. So again, credit to the Warrior defense. I spoke about on the post-game live on Thursday that they're going to need to be an elite defensive team for this team to be any good and for this team to be a playoff team, because even we saw in this one, Steph goes for 31 and 10. He can do that, and the Warriors still are probably only going to be maybe just above average on offense. They're not going to be able to be a top 5-6 offense in the league, not as presently constructed anyway. And so they're going to need to be an elite defensive team, and they keep Minnesota to less than 42% shooting from the floor. They keep them to, they force 15 turnovers and only have 10 themselves. Edwards goes 6 of 20 from the floor. I think Randall went 4 of 13 from the floor, 16 points. That Randall stuff in Minnesota at the moment, that's not going well. McDaniels goes 10 points, 4 of 12 shooting. Conley goes 1 of 6 shooting. And then Dante and Naz Reid were the 2 killers for the Warriors off the bench. Dante, 7 of 12, 19 points, 4 rebounds, 4 assists, couple of steals, played well. And then noted killer Naz Reid, 16 points, 6 of 11, 4 of 7, 4 rebounds as well for him. So the Warriors, they were able to completely shut out the Timberwolves starters in particular. And it was a very good defensive performance, which it's going to need to be to beat. Minnesota clearly aren't in form at the moment, but they are an above 500 team. They are a good team. They are, made the Western Conference Finals last season. To beat these teams, the Warriors are going to have to play elite defense to put themselves in position to win. Drew says, oh my, what a defensive performance by Wiggs. Yeah, this is like classic Andrew Wiggins this season, where he's been very good, but his two-way ability, I think, allows him obviously to have impact on the game, even when he doesn't have it going offensively. Like he made a lob dunk and a layup in the final 90 seconds there, which ended up getting him to 9 points on 3 of 11 shooting, 1 of 5 from 3, 2 rebounds, 2 assists. So he didn't play well whatsoever offensively, and yet he has 3 steals, couple of blocks, still has an impact on the defensive end, makes things really tough on not only Edwards, but he had that huge block on Randall as well. He's two-way ability allows him to impact games even when he doesn't have it going offensively. So a good performance from him, even though he only had 9 points. Shivanches, Trace Jackson Davis for the win. Yeah, huge performance from Trace, as I spoke about. GSW, the Schroeder trek was stupid. He was just saying he was tripped. Tech getting out of control now. Seeing a ball boy get one in the Knicks versus Pelicans today. Yeah. And then was someone about to get a tech for trying to advise the ref that there was like a spillage on the court? Like Pods and Schroeder, I think, were trying to point out to the ref that there was a spillage on the court. And then I swear I saw the T signal, and then they like must have rescinded it or something because they realized that, hey, they're just trying to point out that they want the game to be stopped to clean this up. So I don't know. Some of the refereeing lately, it is what it is. We know that. FTW Clan, what did I miss? You missed a Curry flurry late, 11 points in 90 seconds in the final few minutes there to bring the Warriors home with a much-needed win after a season best performance from Trace Jackson Davis. That's how I sum up the game. Steph and TJD, the biggest talking points from this one. The Warrior defense as well, particularly in the second quarter, where the Timberwolves went nearly 8 minutes without scoring a single point. It's pretty hard to win games when you go nearly 8 minutes without scoring. And the Timberwolves did put up 38 points in the third, but that's what they needed to do to get back in the game. And the Warriors have kind of been in this themselves, where you go such long stretches without any offense whatsoever. It means you have to play flawlessly almost to win the game from there. And if you don't, then you've just put yourself too much behind the 8 ball, and that's what the Timberwolves did in this game. Van Decker says Randall and Edwards were like 1 of 14 in the first quarter, absolutely locked them. Drew says Steve needs to keep the starting lineup consistent, but random injuries don't help. So that's a big talking point for me as well. I'm sick. Like, I know I want to talk positively in this game. Like, we won, fantastic. But the constant change in the starting lineup, again, as you say, the injuries don't help. Draymond's ankle issue, whatever. But just, you got to stick to something. You have to stick to something. The best teams in the league have certainty, have clarity on what they're doing from a game-by-game basis. And even Steve was asked, like someone asked Steve after the game, like, is the Kuminga at power forward stuff, is that over now? You're not going to go back to that? And he said, oh, not necessarily. We'll just wait and see. Stop with the wait and see stuff. Stop with, we'll decide based on who the opponent is and who's playing well. And I feel like the Kyle Anderson thing today, he just made that up. He literally just made that up and said, I don't really want to start JK and Trace together because they're 2 young players. And you know what? Kyle Anderson against his former team, maybe that'll give us a lift. That's literally, I think, there was no other reason as to why Kyle Anderson started over Jonathan Kuminga, aside from those 2 factors, I think. And so you've just got to go to something. Like, it's just weird that Kyle Anderson, who's got a DNP the other night, who's been playing very scarcely recently, and now all of a sudden he's in the starting lineup. Like, come on. We gotta figure something out here. We can't go the entire season chopping and changing. Okay, you bring Schroeder in, hasn't looked great. I just keep him in the starting lineup. Like, clearly, him and Steph, I think, will play okay together. Steve talked after the game about Schroeder's leadership, about the fact that his presence out there allowed Steph to get a bit of an extended rest at the start of the fourth and allowed Steph to be fresh and come back in and take the game over when he came back in. But the 4-5 combination, so you got Steph, Schroeder, Wiggins, that's fine. 1 through 3 there, whatever. The 4-5, figure it out. Figure it out. And I'm not sure, as I said after the post-game live on Thursday, not sure there's an answer there. Who it is, it's probably going to be Draymond and TJD now. It should be those 2 guys, I suppose, until there's a change made roster-wise and there's a trade. Because if Kuminga's not going to start, I've decided Kuminga's off the team by February 6th. If he's not a starter, and I just wanted the Kuminga trial. I wanted that to last 10 to 15 games. See how it went. It lasted like 2 or 3. Okay, because Draymond had those couple of games where he was out injured anyway, and so yes, JK might have started 5 or 6 games in a row, But really, like the Kuminga starting Draymond off the bench stuff only lasted 2 or 3 games. That's just not long enough to figure it out. And so you're chopping and changing all the time. Just do something. Stay with something. I don't even care if it's like not necessarily working. Just try something out. Give something a 10 to 15 game period, unless it's blatantly obvious. Like when Lindy Waters was starting after the Melton injury, I was pretty hard on, okay, you need to change this up because Lindy Waters clearly wasn't the answer. But Steph, Schroeder, Wiggins, Draymond and TJD, just stick with that. If that is what you're going to decide, that you just stick with it for 10, 15 games. And in the meantime, you're probably going to have to find a trade for Kuminga, to be honest. Bree says TJD must start and play 30 plus minutes. If he's going to play like that, yes. And if he's going to play like that, it kind of also makes Looney more expendable. The issue is TJD hasn't been playing like that this season. It's forced Steve to probably go to Looney more than what he wants. Shavant says BP got a tech for pointing at the spillage. Well, I think I don't think they ended up giving, they rescinded it, didn't they? I think they gave it to him initially and then they were like, oh no, we see what you're doing here. We'll take that back. The refs removed it, as GSW says. Gamer FTP, not playing Trace and JK to end is criminal. Give them minutes. I think Trace finished the game. And deserved to. Bree says, unfortunately, it looks like we need to move on from Looney. He's not a center in the NBA anymore. We need an athletic big man who can score ASAP. Doesn't even need to be an athletic big man because I think Trace is that. Like Trace, when he plays like that, looks super athletic. And I saw someone tweet out, I was like, why is this guy, he's willing to dunk over Gobert and Wemby, like two of the best defenders in the league, and yet he gets to other guys who are his size or smaller and he just can't do anything. It's really weird. Dan Decker, TJD just needs to be consistent. Absolutely. Gamer F2P. Trace brings way more than Looney, even if Looney gets a few offensive rebounds. They're different. And I think different situations will ask for each guy kind of in different scenarios, but I still want an offensive guy. I still want another, like a third option there, and maybe it's Looney having to be involved in the trade to make it happen, but I want another guy there who can actually put the ball in the basket a little bit more from, mid-range and has a bit more touch around the basket. Like TJD's finishing this season outside of today's game has been woeful. So I need to see this more consistently. FTW Clan says, so the Wolves are having similar offensive struggles as the Warriors this season. Yeah, like they've got more offensive talent, you'd have to say, like Ant and Randall. But I think Randall takes away from Ant. Like, I'd be very, very concerned if I was a Timberwolves fan. Like, I just think and I said this at the time, the Randall fit doesn't make any sense. Like, it doesn't make any sense with what the Timberwolves currently have. Conley's not shooting the ball well at all this season. McDaniels hasn't shot the ball very well either. Dante, they're asking him to be more of a backup point guard when he's just not that, although he played better today. They're unwilling to play Rob Dillingham, which is interesting. Like, they traded up to get a guy in the top 10 and won't play him. I don't know. I think there's going to be changes. I don't think Minnesota can continue with this roster as it currently stands, but I don't know how they're going to get off Randall. I suppose he can be, he's an expiring with a player option, I think. I'm not sure who's going to take him on. You need to be a very specific system to use Julius Randle effectively. And even then, there's limitations on where you're going to get to if he's like one of your lead guys. A few more comments here. Gamer FTP, you know why Warriors couldn't score? Because Kerr kept playing Wiggins for the entire second into the third. Why? Because he wanted Wiggins to get going. He had 0 points. FTW Clan, how does Steve start Kyle Anderson this game but DMPs him against the Mavs? No wonder none of our players can stay consistent. Yeah, that's a huge point. Like, it's really part of getting clarity and part of like just decide on something and stick with it is actually just trying to get guys into a rhythm and saying, okay, here's our starting five. You can come into this game. You can come into every game expecting what we're going to ask of you. You're going to be in a starting role. You're not going to be in a starting role. You're going to play 25, 30 plus minutes. You're in an 18, 20 minute bet. Like, this is what it should be. Like, this is, if this works, then this is what it should, like Steph playing 34, Schroeder playing 28, TJD playing just under 26, Wiggins playing 29, Buddy Hield playing 20. Like, the Hield Pajemski minutes, like, that's perfect. Hield playing 20, going 4 of 9, 11 points, gives you a little bit of offense. Wasn't great, but wasn't terrible, was handy. That's what you want from him. Pod's playing 19 and a half minutes and having a really big impact. That's what you want. You don't necessarily want him playing 30-plus minutes, and he's not with Schroeder now out there. So Kuminga, again, I think he should be traded. I think, but he still plays 23 and a half minutes. Where that will be when Draymond's back, maybe it's still around that mark because they'll just take Kyle Anderson's minutes away. Who knows? But just decide on something so guys can try and get a rhythm. A gamer FTP, while JK was much better and hot, but was sat with 9 minutes played only until the late third quarter after Warriors lost the lead trying to get Wiggins going. Bree says, right, he has to get a clear-cut lineup. TJD, Wiggins, Steph, Dre, and Kuminga should start is what it is. Curry's throwing anything at the while to see what sticks. It's frustrating. Yeah, so you're advocating for the initial starting lineup to the start of the season, which would have Kuminga at the 3, Wiggins at the 2, and Schroeder as the 6-man. Don't think there's enough shooting out there, although you can argue Schroeder isn't bringing any range at the moment. He went 0-4 from 3 today. Schroeder wasn't great. He was -9 in his minutes, 9 points, 2 rebounds, 3 assists, steal and a block, 3 turnovers. Look, I don't hate those minutes though. Like I think he'll get better offensively. I think he'll just get better in general as he becomes more acclimatized to the team. So not too concerned with that. Again, like I want to give this guy 10 to 12 games before you really evaluate how he's going with the Warriors. Gamer F2P, very frustrating. Jackson says Kyle Anderson was listed with a neck injury before the Mavs game. I'm pretty sure he was available, wasn't he? Anyway, Gamer FTP, TJD is a player. He doesn't get minutes. Players look like this under Kerr's rotation. Douglas Mike says, remember how we were talking about trading Draymond for Jimmy Butler? Would still love to do that. We were talking about that on Thursday. I don't think it's going to happen. But would you trade Wiggins? I think a lot of people would probably see the 3 of 11 shooting today, 9 points, and say, oh yeah, easy done. Let's trade Wiggins and Kuminga and whatever else other salary we need to get to Jimmy Butler. But you got to look at Wiggins' defensive impact. And can a 35-year-old Jimmy Butler go and hound and play hard defense on Anthony Edwards? Anthony Edwards played 39 minutes. Can Jimmy Butler do that at his age? Maybe in the playoffs, but I have question marks on whether he can do that in the regular season and whether the Warriors would even want to do that in the regular season. Gamer FTP, Curry's actively sabotaging JK. Yes, he should be traded. Yeah, I mean, it's hard to disagree with that. It's hard to disagree. Like the Kuminga stuff, it's just so up and down. It's so up and again, like it's what's he supposed to do without a rhythm? Like how it's really difficult for a young player to go in and out of a starting role, to be playing 35 minutes one game, 20 the next, and I don't know. It's tough. I still see the issue is, and I think the issue the Warriors are still having is you can see the talent. You can he has that 5-6 game period where he averages over 20 points and wins that game basically by himself against Houston, where he Warriors won 99-93, really low scoring game, but JK has a career high 33 points, and that looked like he could take off from that point, but he didn't because he's just never really taken off. Never really had the open runway, the opportunity to do so. And, he starts the next few games and then, of course, he's back into a bench role now. Like, I don't know. The Warriors, I think, are still scared about him going to another team and just becoming this really dynamic force, this 22 to 25 point per game scorer that you can see the talent's there for him to become that. And that's why they just won't trade him at the moment. But I don't know. There's a point coming here where you got to decide because he's still going to command over $100 million in free agency. Douglas Mikes, I wouldn't trade Wiggins and Kuminga for Jimmy Butler. Yeah, I think on the surface, I probably wouldn't either. But if the team keeps losing and it's almost like you got to make a change for change's sake and you want to try and become the most dangerous playoff team possible, then maybe you make that deal. I know it's a pipe dream, but a lineup of Steph, Butler, Wiggins, Kuminga, center would be crazy. Interesting. Would the Miami Heat have interest in Draymond Green? Would they? Probably. Maybe with Hero and Bam. Pretty good 4-5 combo from a defensive standpoint. Maybe a bit limited offensively. The Warriors aren't going to trade Draymond. They're just not going to do that. So it's probably a pretty pointless conversation. We've been going for nearly half an hour here. Anything else? Douglas Mike says Draymond might go to another team. It would be about Jimmy making a big stink and Heat having no choice. Yeah, like it's not even about whether Miami would say yes or not. It's just me saying I don't think the Warriors would even entertain trading Draymond. Not at this point, anyway. Just a few other scores from around the association. The Lakers beat the Kings. The Warriors now have the Pacers, and then the Lakers on Christmas Day. Orlando outscored Miami 37-8 in the fourth quarter to win by 7. That's extraordinary. Memphis beat Atlanta. They keep their run going. Pelicans lost. Pelicans are out of the playoff. They're bottom of the West now, so no one cares about them. Boston get revenge on Chicago. How did Levine and Vucevic go? Vucevic, 8 of 19, 19 points, 10 rebounds. So not efficient, but still productive. Still, like he has probably a bad game and has 19 and 10, and we're talking about TJD having a good game with 15 and 9. So, I mean, TJD clearly is going to bring more defensive impact. I don't know. Could you get rid of Looney and just have Vucevic and TJD as your two centers with Draymond as small ball option? Maybe. Levine had 14 points on 4 of 11 shooting. Not a great game from him after 36 the other day. Looking at other games around the West, San Antonio beat Portland, so they're still around the play-in race. Dallas beat the Clippers 113-97. If you haven't seen it, sounds like Kawhi Leonard might make his season debut against the Warriors on December 27, which is hilarious. Just seems like that was bound to be the case. The Warriors kind of going through this rough patch, very difficult schedule, and just to make things worse, Kawhi Leonard's probably going to come back for his season debut against them. Just classic. And then Detroit, the Pistons, big win over the Suns in Phoenix. 133-125. Cade Cunningham, 28 points, 13 assists. The Suns playing without Devin Booker. Did have KD, though, who went for 43. KD and Beal combined for 69 points and lost at home to Detroit. That's incredible. Let's have a quick look at the stand. I'll get through a few more comments from you guys here. Jackson says, "Oh my bad. Kyle had neck spasms in previous Mavs game a month ago." Yeah, that was the case. Douglas Mike, Jimmy is such a risk right now. That's why I'm only trading Draymond for now. The issue is you'd have to trade Draymond and salary. Like Jimmy still makes over $20 million more than Draymond, so it'd be like Draymond, GP2, Looney. You might have to throw Kuminga in there just to get to the salaries. Slow-mo maybe, like picks. Like it's a lot more than just a simple straight trade of Jimmy Butler for Draymond. FTW Clan says the Warriors said they don't want Butler because they're concerned about his availability. Plus, he just re-injured his ankle last game. I did see those reports. Not sure how legitimate they are, but yes, that's certainly a concern when you've got a guy making nearly $50 million and who's going to want an extension in excess of $50 million in the offseason. Gamer FTP, what's the update standings? Let's have a look. The Warriors go ahead of Minnesota. I know that because both teams were 14 and 12 going in to this game. That's the East. The Cavs are 25 and 4. My goodness. The West. Here we go. The Warriors up to 7th. So that one victory pushes them from 10th up to 7th. It's still very close right now. The Thunder 22 and 5. Memphis are 20 and 9. Geez, they're on a roll. Houston 18 and 9. I still think the Warriors aren't that. They're 3 games behind Houston in the 3 seed, and I still think are any of these teams categorically better than the Warriors? Like Houston, Dallas maybe, but like Lakers, Nuggets, Warriors, Clippers, Spurs, Timberwolves, Suns. Suns are now 11th. Sacramento lost to the Lakers. They're in a bit of a hole. Talk to me about De'Aaron Fox. Would you have any interest in De'Aaron Fox as a backcourt teammate for Steph? Probably not at the moment, given clearly they've just brought in Schroeder. But maybe could that be an off-season move? Is that good enough defensively? Certainly brings some juice offensively. We know Fox is now with Curry Brand, so there's clearly a relationship there. There were reports earlier that his management have gone to the Kings front office just to seek clarification on the future, basically. I don't know. Talk to me a bit about De'Aaron Fox. But on the standings, there is currently 4 games between the 3rd seed and the 11th seed right now. So you've got those bunch of teams. I think OKC clearly going to be the best team in the West. Memphis making a pretty strong push here to say they're the second best. And then from there, Houston, Dallas, Lakers, Denver, Golden State, Clippers, San Antonio, Minnesota, Phoenix. Those 8 teams, or 9 teams, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9 teams. That's a logjam. That's a logjam where you could be anywhere. Like a couple of wins and all of a sudden you're up to 3rd, and a couple of losses and you're down to 11th. It's all those teams above 500 now. So yeah, it's scary to look at the standings. But the Warriors, they've gone through a tough schedule. They're still thereabouts, and that's what I said the other day after the Memphis losses. At least they started the season 12-3. So yes, this has been a disaster. Just their 3rd win today in the last 12 games, but they're still in an okay position. It's not as if their season's done and dusted and we should be looking ahead to next season. They're still in the fight. FTW Clan says, I think Bam would be a better trade. Yeah, you're just kind of robbing Peter to pay Paul there, though, if you're going to be like Wiggins for Bam or something. Could you get away with the Draymond Bam front court combination at the Warriors? Possibly. Jackson says we would need another trade of one guy for multiple other guys to meet the 14-player minimum 2, no space, a sign filler. Yeah, it's important. Any 3-for-1, 4-for-1 trade, whatever it may be, the Warriors have to have money left over to go and sign guys in free agency or make another deal. Draymond, Slow-Mo, GP2 and small salaries would work. I would even consider Schroeder since Butler would take over the 2 spot. I don't know. He's gutting your roster and not only gutting your depth, but getting rid of a guy like Draymond, who is such a key piece to the franchise, like a legit franchise legend. Is that worth it for a 35-year-old Jimmy Butler? I can see the argument. Just the Warriors aren't going to do it. Gamer FTP says, and Warriors schedule post All-Star break is really easy. Yeah, let's hope they can go on a decent. Obviously, they went on a really big run at the end of last season. What were they? 27-12 in their last 39 games last season, yet they didn't make the playoffs. At least this season, they're above 500. They're 15-12. This time last season, they were kind of below 500, scrambling a little bit, and even the great finish to last season wasn't enough to even get a playoff spot. Gamer FTP says, I expect a lot of winning streaks. Cornerless says, let's just see where we're at after 10 games. We've got to see how Dennis changes the team. Yeah, I said before, I think 10 to 12 games of Dennis Schroeder to kind of reevaluate what not only he looks like as a Warrior, but what the team looks like as well. But more importantly than that, I think they need to decide on what they're doing at the 4-5 position. Douglas Mike says, I agree this organization isn't getting rid of Draymond, just a dream. And Cornelis says Steph wouldn't allow a Dre trade, which is, yes, just not going to happen. Too much chemistry, too much history between those guys. It's one thing letting Klay Thompson walk in for agency. It's another thing actively trading Draymond Green. It might happen at some point. It might happen. I'm not saying that it won't happen at some point down the line, but it's not going to happen right now. It's the Warriors are still in a reasonable position, and Draymond is still impact. I know he had a woeful performance against Memphis on Thursday, but he's still been, he's had a good season. He's still playing impactful basketball, particularly on the defensive end. FTW Clint says, I just dreamed this Warriors team finishing the season top 6 in the West. I can't take another play-in season. Well, I think there's still optimism of that. Like, I still think they're capable. I look at this West, and again, Houston, Dallas, Los Angeles, Denver, like those 4 teams above the Warriors. Why can't the Warriors go on a run and finish above 3 of those teams? Like, why can't they do that? They should be able to, I think. FTW Clint says, give Curry a chance at a playoff series. That's, we just got to try and get to the playoffs, and ideally as a top 6 seed, and then we'll see where the roster is at that point and how they're playing over the second half of the season. Anyway, been going for nearly 39 minutes here. I'm going to finish it up. Big win for the Warriors, 10-point win. Huge game from Steph, particularly late. Trace was huge. Let's hope we can see some consistent performances like that from him moving forward. Pods is on the improve, and I think deserves a shout-out. I want to give him a shout-out because he's been getting so much hate so far this season that when he plays well, I want to recognize that and appreciate that. So he played well. Wiggins, huge defensively, not so much offensively. But yeah, Steph, TJD, the biggest positives from this one. Warriors play Indiana on Monday. So I'll be back for a post-game live after that. If anything huge happens in the meantime, I don't know, there's still some trade stuff floating about. We could still see something in the next few weeks ahead of the February 6th deadline. In fact, I'd imagine we will see something in the next few weeks, whether it's imminent or closer to the deadline. We will wait and see. Thank you very much to those of you that have tuned in and to those of you that have commented. If you're watching this on replay as well or on the podcast feed, much appreciated. If you haven't subscribed to the YouTube channel already, you can, that would be greatly appreciated. If you could do that, you can follow me at POK252. That's POK252 on X/Twitter or on Instagram, TikTok, Golden State with Mates as well. Let's hope the Warriors can get back-to-back victories against the Pacers on Monday. They haven't won back-to-back games for over a month now, so let's hope they can back up this impressive win over the Timberwolves. Thanks, guys.